how is Maine impacted by the wildfires in California? Well, they are absolutely impacted because those insurance companies that insure you in Maine might also be insuring those wildfires in California.
Mm-hmm.
And now they need to recoup, they need to spread the risk, and they need to get more insurance premium across their whole portfolio, which is why they're driving premiums up in excess of 10,
I'm glad you brought up
20%.
California. Welcome to Housing Matters, the podcast that covers everything real estate, from buying your first home to building your investment portfolio. Hosted by me, Matt Pouliot, Pouliot Real Estate. Each episode brings expert insights, smart strategies, and real talk on housing and affordability. If it's about real estate, it matters here. And today, I am thrilled to be hosting our 14th episode with Dottie Chalmers, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Chalmers Insurance. Dottie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
For sure.
Excited to be here in the hot seat.
I know, it's great. And this is a little different for me as well as the host of this podcast, because now I'm doing this with you, but I was on your podcast a little while back.
And your episode just dropped yesterday for us. So
it's really exciting.
Thank you for being on my podcast, and I'm excited to return the favor.
Sure, yeah. So Dottie graduated from Bowdoin College in 2003 and began working at Chalmers Insurance Group in 2005. That's the same year I graduated from high school. So she definitely has wisdom on me, that's for sure. She holds a license as a Maine property and casualty insurance agent and initially managed a personal lines portfolio. In 2018, Dottie, alongside her cousin Jim Chalmers, acquired the agency from their fathers. Dottie now manages the company's operations. Her psychology degree from Bowdoin College has translated into a passion for talent development, mentorship, and enhancing motivation and engagement in the workplace. She has shifted the agency's focus from traditional performance management to development-oriented approach, advocating for a managerial style that emphasizes coaching over supervising. I think that's so cool. Mm-hmm. Dottie is a certified leadership coach and leads the Emerging Leaders program at Chalmers. And not only does she do all that, but she also champions women in insurance, contributing to publications such as The Standard and Be the Last Agent Standing. She holds leadership roles, including serving on the executive committee of the Institute for Family-Owned Businesses in Maine, which I'm really excited to have just recently joined.
Yay.
at your encouragement. And as past chair, she is the 2023 Leaders and Luminaries Award winner from Camden National Bank. As first vice president of the Girl Scouts of Maine board, she contributes to board member recruitment and development, and she is also active volunteer with Junior Achievement of Maine, which is super close to my heart. I used to be a part of their board. In her free time, she enjoys downhill skiing, strength training, riding her Peloton bike, and spending time with her husband, Adam, Director of Information and Security at Chalmers. Her 3 children, Sophia, Mackenzie, and William, and a golden doodle, Zealand.
Yep.
She lives in North Yarmouth, Maine. Dottie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
You know, in reading through this, I'm like, holy smokes, we got a lot of things in common. I have a golden doodle. I love to ski. And why is the dog's name Zealand? I want to know that first.
Oh, because I studied abroad in New Zealand for a semester when I was at Bowdoin College, and I liked it so much that I ended up getting a 1-year working visa. So when all of my Bowdoin friends were getting like their first big job, I moved back to New Zealand.
That's awesome.
And got a job there.
On the North Island?
In Wellington, the southern tip of the North Island. And I worked for Kathmandu, which is kind of like an LL Bean of New Zealand, and lived my best life for about a year until my visa expired. So hence the dog is Zealand after New Zealand. And I promised my family that I will get them to New Zealand, but I want them to be able to really remember it's a long way to go. So I want them to be able to remember the trip.
My wife and I went there in 2016 and rented a camper van and went all around the whole perimeter of the island.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's really like
I felt like I was in the Lord of Rings.
You really are. And it's like the cinematography, it really looks that way. They didn't have to do much in terms of like adding backdrops because the mountains, you have it all. Yeah. Mountains, lakes, geysers, hot springs, ocean. Yeah. It's all there.
Super cool. So I want to start with talking about carrying the torch. You are a 4th generation leader of a 168-year-old company. I mean, around since 1857.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk us through how the agency got its start and
Yeah.
and how it's grown to where it
I'll
is
kind of
today?
give you the shorter version,
Sure.
because it's got a lot of history. But yeah, 1857, the agency was founded, but not by a Chalmers member at that time. It ended up coming into the Chalmers family in 1928 via my great-great-grandfather, who started working at that agency and eventually, joined forces with the then owner, and has since then brought in my grandfather and then my uncle and my dad. So Jim and I are now the fourth generation to own and operate it. And back then, I mean, it was one agency in Bridgeton, Maine, on very much Main Street, Bridgeton. And I remember when my uncle and my grandfather were there in like the 50s, I'd say, they had one employee, Winnie Plummer. She's part of our history. She made $18 a week at that time. And today, I mean, fast forward, we're 8 locations, 6 in Maine, 2 in New Hampshire, and about 100 coworkers now. So we've grown tremendously over that time period.
That's impressive. But you have kind of put your own approach on leadership through mentorship and culture building, right? And what's kind of been most rewarding for you in that evolution?
I mean, I love it all. I think for me in particular, building the culture was really important. And I will say, my dad and my uncle were so revered and respected, not just in the local community, but in the insurance industry. And they were loved. Everybody who knew them loved them. And so when I joined and my cousin Jim joined, I was really struggling with like, how can I make my mark? And what's my kind of legacy going to become? And how can I help this agency prosper and grow? And so I went to University of Southern Maine and got my human resource management certification. And with that, I got a tremendous amount of knowledge about leadership and culture building. And so I really kind of was able to, I really loved people. I love people. I was a psych major. So I love that I get to profoundly impact people that work for us. And I find I get such energy and inspiration from helping mentor, develop, and lead, especially the rising stars, which we call the emerging leaders within the company. So I would say culture building, definitely rewarding. And I also worked really hard too to become a best place to work in insurance. So where it's similar to best places in Maine, right? But we actually have, we have administered same by Best Companies Group, who does Best Places to Work in Maine. They do Best Places to Work in Insurance, which is nationwide. So it doesn't limit us to just Maine, because I do have offices in New Hampshire too. So I wanted to be able to take a survey, have all my people take the survey to figure out if we are a best place to work. And Best Places to Work in Insurance kind of gave us that flexibility.
Nationally?
We scored 96% employee satisfaction. But when I first kind of started really getting into management at Chalmers, we took Best Places to Work in Maine, and we scored 86%.
Wow.
86% to 96%. So we made tremendous impact by really working on our culture. And that's where I feel like I added a lot of value in terms of trying to create a workforce that's engaged, motivated, inspired.
What are some of the things that you do to affect that kind of change?
I mean, that's a great question. It's really, and it kind of, I know it goes to one of the other questions you were going to asking around just the whole concept of employees don't want to work for a boss. They really want to coach. So we were able to create this whole culture of coaching leadership. And so what is a coaching leader? And that's really our model, is that, well, a coaching leader brings out the best in others, gives them meaningful work, make sure that they're giving them the right amount of reinforcing feedback, like a lot of recognition, but also the right amount of course correcting feedback, making sure that they're designing innovative work practices, that they're just being a good employer, but through constant coaching, not really managing. So when you do that and you create that, it creates a tremendous amount of buy-in. And I found that our coworkers really embraced that because they were getting more continuous feedback more often. And that's really what the role of a coach should be, right?
And do you do that with like continued, like just checking in with them? I'm asking more now because I'm curious as the owner of this company how
that's
to
a good
do that
question.
here.
And so basically, I think a lot of employers get into the habit of doing an annual performance appraisal, right? And that is no longer effective because what we know is that people want more continuous feedback than once a year. So we shifted. We said, okay, bye-bye to the annual performance appraisal. That's not really working for us. So we shifted to individual development plans for everybody in our company. And we check in with them. They're checking in with their manager or supervisor either every week or every other week. And then they're looking at their IDP, their individual development plan, at least on a quarterly basis with their manager or supervisor. So the point is that their goals are always top of mind. And they're always getting the right mix of reinforcing feedback and course corrective if necessary. But honestly, it takes a tremendous amount of recognition. And I have a saying, which I didn't create it, but this is just kind of it's proven. And it's called the 8-to-1 ratio. So it takes 8, I call ongoing regards, which are basically recognition. Takes 8 thank yous to every one course correcting conversation that you have. So it's called like your chips in the bank. 8 chips in the bank to every one course correcting conversation. So when you think about that.
Wait a second. What if you have to course correct with somebody, but you've only got 6 chips in the bank?
You don't have enough chips.
You got to wait to course correct?
It's basically, you could be in the negative. Sometimes I tell this to my managers too. I go, you have no chips in the bank. You are negative chips. So they know what I mean. What I mean is that you have to do way more recognition all the time. But it can't be just a thank you. It has to be more meaningful than that. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that it has to be the feedback that the recognition has to be, there's 3 parts. It has to be direct, it has to be specific, and you have to describe the impact. And that's where I think a lot of people or managers make the mistake is that they just give, oh, Matt, thank you so much. It was great to be on your podcast. Well, that's a thank you. That's not an ongoing regard. An ongoing regard would be me having to say, hey, Matt, thank you for the opportunity for me to serve on your podcast. And by doing that, you are now allowing me to show, my constituents more about me as a leader and to learn more about Chalmers. And the impact of that is that my business could increase as a result of this exposure. So thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
So you see how it's direct, specific, and impactful. It's not just like, thanks for letting me be on your podcast. So it's got to be bigger than that. So that's something that I really push my managers through proper training. They know. And best practice is also that ongoing regards should be handwritten thank you notes.
Yeah.
They can be verbal, but it's more proven to have a handwritten thank you note be more impactful because if you think about it, how often
keep the
do you
note
get,
that you
how
have
often do you
sent
get
me on my desk.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we know is that in this day and age of a digital day and age where everybody's so quick to email, really, or we get just, a lot of bills in the mail, it's really meaningful when you actually get a handwritten thank you note that's personalized, impactful, and I send them to my employee's home address. And that's also like a best practice. So don't mail it to their workplace, but you mail it to their actual home residence. And it's more impactful that way.
Yeah.
And they save them. They tell me this. I send birthday cards and work anniversary cards to all of my employees every year, and they keep them. They never throw them away because it's that rare that they actually, get that type of correspondence. So they usually tend to keep it.
It's so true. We all get like birthday cards. I hope you do. I mean, I get a couple, but the ones that I remember the most are the ones that my aunt sends me every year because she takes the time to go through old photos from when we were kids, which, when folks pass away, those things get lost in the shuffle. Maybe they get thrown away. Well, she cuts them up and puts them on to the birthday card and then sends it, which is great. I mean, I'm not caring that she cut up the picture. I didn't even know it existed. Yeah. But recently we had our first child, Grant, and this year she sent ones of me with my grandfather holding me as a little kid. And, it's just super personal. And I keep all those cards for my aunt. The other birthday cards, they just like happy birthday. Those kind of get tossed in time.
Yes.
But I'll never throw
You
away
never
these
throw away
cards
because
from
it's
my
more
aunt
personalized,
that have
right?
the pictures.
What I also have noticed, because I've been doing handwritten notes for so many years now, and it never gets old, I oftentimes get a thank you for the thank you.
Yeah.
Because it's that rare that my staff is getting, such personalized notes that they will ping me or call me and say, "Oh, I just want to thank you for the thank you note, or thank you for the birthday card, thank you," because it's that rare in this day and age to get something like that. So I love getting a thank you for the thank you.
That's cool.
I find that motivating, and it keeps me want to keep doing what I do.
So in your day-to-day, you're really focused on the operations of the company and keeping things moving forward smoothly. But you have agency offices across the state of Maine and New Hampshire. So what do you love most about being part of these communities? And also, like, how is insurance, which we've been the
We'll
primary,
get there.
we'll
Yeah.
get there.
We'll get there.
That's how it relates to housing for those listening. How is it different from town to town?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, first and foremost, I'm really lucky and fortunate to work in the town I grew up in, which is Bridgeton, Maine. And that's where we call it the mothership. That's where the mothership, the home office is, with such deep roots. And so I love that I went to high school and elementary school, and I went to church in that community. I played a lot of sports in that community. So I know so many of the community members in Bridgeton. And I love also that these local communities are just small towns with a Main Street center, a lot of local Main Street businesses, small businesses, which is kind of really the backbone of Maine, is a lot of small business. I also love the beauty. I love the Lakes region. I love lakes and mountains. I mean, Maine's vacation land. We're pretty spoiled, I think, to be a part of this part of the world. And so the communities are also deeply rooted in small town feel. I mean, we're not really in Portland, right? Which has definitely changed. Our communities are more rural, kind of more blue collar communities. With the exception of a few. We are in North Conway, New Hampshire, which is definitely more bustling. We go as south as York, Maine, and that's also very different demographic in terms of client base down in southern Maine. You're very close to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's coastal, gets a lot more probably the affluent clientele in that part of Maine. But I think what makes Maine so special and these communities special is that deep down, like, Mainers know what it's like to work hard, and they value relationships and they value community and supporting local, including small business owners. And so I'm just super grateful that our clients and our small town communities that we're in trust us with something as important as their insurance, right? And that we are a go-to local, friendly, knowledgeable resource for a lot of small businesses throughout our 8 communities in which we have agency footprints in. So it's pretty special.
How many sporting teams do you sponsor? I'm curious.
Oh my gosh. Way too many. Because one of our pillars of community involvement is centered around youth sports and recreation.
Yeah.
So we get a tremendous amount of
I'm just thinking
asks.
with all these towns, that's a lot of Little League and softball,
It's a lot of Little Leagues.
soccer
It's a
teams.
lot of high school yearbook ads.
Yeah.
It's a lot of high school musicals. Will you be in our program? We've had to kind of narrow our focus. You have to, I think, as a business owner, because there's so many wonderful organizations and nonprofits that I'd love to support them all. We've really, over the years, had to get a little bit more disciplined, because we also look at, are they a client of ours? We obviously also want to support clients that support us too. We love youth sports and recreation. We love nonprofits. We really have a niche and a focus area of food insecurity and children, especially, that are experiencing food insecurity. So we tend to spend a lot of our resources on those, like, school backpack programs, like N68 Hours of Hunger is a great one. That's also in a lot of our communities where we have offices, so we can not just donate money to the cause, but we actually have a lot of our coworkers will go and pack the backpacks and fill them with non-perishable food items to give to a student Because in theory, the N 68 hours is there. A lot of kids in Maine go hungry from school on after school lunch on Friday to breakfast on Monday. That's 68 hours, and they go with food insecurity. So these backpacks are given to these identified children so that they can go the weekend without being hungry. So
I didn't know that there was a program that was named that.
Yeah,
my sister is a guidance counselor in Maine, and she reached out recently because one of the bills that I passed when I was in the legislature was to ensure that all students would have access to not only free breakfast but also free lunch. And there were a lot of reasons for that, but essentially we invest a lot of money in education, and if kids are hungry, they're not going to be able to pay attention. Plus, it's just the right thing to do. But she had explained that they were having a drop-off in the amount of items that they had to be able to send home with kids, and a lot of what was ending up becoming available was this stuff jam-packed with high fructose corn syrup, and just, it's tough because calories will keep you alive, but is it really giving you abundant health? No, because not all calories are created equal.
I know a lot of times it's ramen noodle, like things they also have to fit in a backpack too. And so a lot of times it's peanut butter and jelly and bread and ramen noodles and canned items. So to the point, it would be nice to have healthier.
Yeah, it's tough because they're not non-perishable, and sadly, a lot of folks are coming from households where if you sent home a turnip, they wouldn't necessarily know what to do with it. So part of it's education on the whole foods front as well. But kudos to you and your company for being involved in that, because I think it's something that's universally true, and that obviously we all need to eat to survive, and just unfortunately, due to inflation and all these pressures, so many more kids don't have it.
And I just think it impacts, the communities in which we have agencies, quite a few of them are just very rural and lower income, small towns in Maine. We have an office in Cornish, Maine. Freiburg, Bridgeton is unique, but so these are Norway, Maine. We have another office. It's just, they're unique, kind of more rural, blue collar, and unfortunately there's a lot of food insecurity.
Yeah, for sure.
Communities.
So I want to shift gears a little bit to insurance and talk a little bit about what folks who are buying their first home or maybe even their second home. I think insurance, particularly now, given the natural disasters that we've had, is just kind of one more confusing box to check. And it's kind of also getting more expensive. So what are some of the absolute must-knows when it comes to choosing the right policy? And are there common mistakes that people make during the closing process that could be avoided if people were more prepared?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'm excited to answer this. I would say my advice for first and foremost is choose an independent, trusted choice insurance agent like me, right? Like a Chalmers. What that means is we are backed by the Trusted Choice trademark, which means that we have to uphold certain ethical standards in terms of making sure that we are doing right by our client, that we are making sure we're giving them comparative quotes. We are not we don't represent just one insurance company. We represent 30 plus, right? So there are choices exist that we are going to counsel, we are going to advise, we're going to look out for their best interest in terms of what coverages they need to protect what's important to them. I think a lot of times, especially first-time home buyers perhaps, and especially younger, because I do see this, is that their tendency is to go right online. And that they're going to go and they're going to find the cheapest. They're going to go to Geico. They're going to go to right online. They're going to do it themselves and buy a cheap policy. But that is very scary because they're not educated, licensed insurance professionals that know the coverages that they're really going to need for their situation, for their home, for their they could be married with children. They could, there's so much that goes into this. So I think my number one thing is choose a trusted choice agent. That's independent agents. You can even go to www.trustedchoice.com and you can put in the zip code where you're buying a house and it will populate for you a list of recommended trusted choice independent agencies.
That's super helpful because I think a lot of times people are like, hey, I want to do what I'm being encouraged to do, but I don't know where to look. So
Yes.
trusted.
So trustedchoice.com. And I do this a lot of times. Sometimes our clients move
Or
away
of
from
course,
Maine,
just call
right?
Chalmers and you'll
Of
be
course,
all set
call
with all
Chalmers,
these
but
beautiful things being
there
done.
are a lot of wonderful independent agency groups like us, and I'm lucky to know quite a few. And I think Mainers too. Like, we do a really good job. There's a lot of business to go around.
Yeah,
And
and also too, we talk a lot about Maine, and your business is based in Maine and so forth. But people listening to this might be in Idaho, where Chalmers isn't.
Exactly.
And so
how do you know who
Yeah.
to go to? So I would say go to that www.trustedchoice.com. You can find an independent agent, put in your zip code, and it will populate a list of all Trusted Choice independent agencies. That means that they are all backed, they are all licensed professionals that have certain ethical code of conduct that we have to uphold in terms of, you have to think of it too, like, and why would I do independent agent? Think of us like a trusted resource, a trusted, knowledgeable advisor in the same way you would your attorney and your accountant, right? Like, wouldn't you consider your attorney a trusted confidant?
Yes.
We need consumers to understand that you have to think of your insurance professional in that same regard.
Yeah.
That we are trusted, knowledgeable advisors. I have to maintain a certain amount of CE credits every 2 years to keep my license. I have to take ethics every 2 years to keep my license. I know coverage, and I know we're not just going to sell a policy for the sake of making a sale. We are going to sell you a policy based on what we know you need for your unique needs and risks.
Yeah.
We're going to look out for you
Yeah.
and recommend.
Which is great. I mean, and not something that a computer algorithm can do.
No. And it just really scares me when I see a lot of, especially younger consumers, just going to online insurance. They don't know what they're buying. And it's so important because we see, unfortunately, like, we live in a very litigious society where there's a lot of lawsuits, right? So you need to make sure that you
Those lawyers have a lot of law school bills to pay back.
To make sure that you have adequate liability coverage on your homeowners policy, and more than that, you need to have a personal umbrella policy. These are things that a knowledgeable insurance independent agent is going to be able to really advise and offer you that sound counsel. So I'd say that's my first biggest thing. Other things I would tell home buyers is, and this is kind of a funny thing, but this is because I've been in insurance for so long, I am not a fan of escrowing for insurance.
Why?
Because I'll tell you why. Because oftentimes the lender sells the mortgage to another entity, and so they never think to inform the insurance agent that there's been a change in the mortgagee clause. So the mortgage gets sold, it might get sold again. They don't notify the insurance agent, the policy will cancel for non-payment of premium. I've seen that happen so many times. So I am not personally.
And then people don't even know it got canceled.
They don't know it got canceled. If anything, you can escrow for taxes, but I am not a fan of escrowing for insurance. I would say it's better for you to pay your own insurance bill. That way, it got paid. Because mortgages can get sold. And I've seen that happen a lot of times.
Or like, just my own personal experience recently got an update from my mortgage company. Now you've got me thinking, because our insurance is escrowed. And I was just kind of looking at, they tell you, what the payment is. And I'm like, this keeps going up and up. And I'm like, what's going on here? I know our taxes haven't gone up that much, and it's a fixed mortgage, so that shouldn't change. So I finally decided to open the email that they've been sending me for the last 3 years. That it's like, hey, your payment was made. Okay, great. Why is it now X instead of that? A couple hundred more, and I open it up.
Because your premiums are skyrocketing.
And my insurance premium went up almost $2,000 annually. I don't have my insurance from you yet, but
But you're curious, right?
And that prompted me actually to call the company that I have and say, hey, what's the gig? And I had to come to find out a Cadillac plan, and I'm kind of peeling back the onion a little, do I need all this? And ultimately, my premium's down now $1,500 from where it was, because that led me to ask questions. And I think that if now I'm thinking of what you've just said, if the bill was coming to me, you know, directly separated from the payment and so forth, that I probably would have looked more closely
also,
earlier.
you know, hopefully, you know, you want an independent agency that's also proactive and not reactive. And so I think that's something that, you know, we pride ourselves on, is that we really make an effort to call our customers at least like 60 days before you get your renewal, so that we can tell you what's happening in the market. What are we seeing right now across the country? And what we're seeing is that, you know, there's with so many catastrophic losses, with so many natural disasters, we're getting on the forefront to tell our clients that expect your homeowner's premium to go up 10 to 20%. That's what we're seeing right now. And we can then counsel, because this is what we do, we can counsel to say, but here are some cost-saving measures we can look at, right? Like, and maybe it's reviewing the coverages that you have. Like you said, you had a Cadillac plan. Well, what does that mean? You know, the agent should be advising you of all the types of coverages associated.
Well, like in my case, it was like, oh, we're going to replace your shingles to be the same color. And I'm like, well, they're 4 years old. If they blow off, it's not going to be like that big of a different color, and I don't really care, you know?
So there are something, but see, I'd rather be in a position where our job is to tell you and advise, and then you ultimately you're the decision maker. So you can say, is that important to me or is it not? But you need the agent to properly advise and tell you, hey, Matt, this is why, if you decide to take that off, this is what could happen. Yeah. And so that's why it's so important to make sure that you are going to a knowledgeable, trusted agent, that's somebody that you really respect, that you have a good relationship with, that's looking out for your best interests. So that's super important. But yeah, I'm not a fan of escrowing.
I want to stay on this topic a little bit more in terms of like, the escrow piece, because a lot of times people don't necessarily know what that is. But what happens if someone has a home and that premium changes, or the mortgage changes, and it doesn't get, if they had a case, they would get nothing and still have to pay the mortgage? Is that right?
So if the policy cancels for non-payment of premium, and it's a matter of because the mortgagee clause changed, and usually we can go back to the insurance company and logically reason with them and say, hey, look, the mortgage got sold. They didn't notify us. Will you reinstate the coverage? Most times, especially 10 years ago, yes, they would. No problem. We'll reinstate the coverage. But today, Matt, what I'm seeing is insurance companies are really taking a very close look at their book of business, and they are re-examining and re-underwriting their book of business. So let's say your mortgage got bought and sold, your policy cancels for non-payment of premium, and you have an old farmhouse that has 20-plus-year-old shingles. And now you have no insurance coverage, it canceled. The insurance company is probably going to look for a reason not to reinstate. And they're going to say, oh, it's too bad. It canceled for non-payment of premium. And now you don't meet our underwriting guidelines because they've changed. And we want homes with newer roofs. You know, so I am seeing such wild things right now that I've never seen in my 20-year career, because of like what's happening across the country with just all the natural disasters that we're having. But insurance companies, so basically, which is causing insurance companies to pay out billions and billions of dollars in claim payments, which then the way insurance works is they have to spread that risk to everybody, right? And so how is Maine impacted by the wildfires in California? Well, they are absolutely impacted, because those insurance companies that insure you in Maine might also be insuring those wildfires in California. And now they need to recoup, they need to spread the risk, and they need to get more insurance premium across their whole portfolio, which is why they're driving premiums up in excess of 10,
I'm glad you brought up
20%.
California. I think it goes into this too, which is getting the right amount of coverage, right? Because some of these people in California whose homes were burned had insurance, but they only had insurance for, you know, like, I don't know, there's different values. Maybe you can explain this, not full replacement value, but some flat amount.
Actual cash value.
Yeah, and so now you have a home that burned to the ground, and you had your actual cash value plan at like $800,000, but it was worth, I mean, these are bigger numbers in Malibu, California, but it's worth like 3 million, you know, so they basically just walk away from the thing because.
Yeah, California is a unique breed, and I'm not licensed,
No,
not
it's
licensed agent,
right.
so I don't want to probably focus on California. But what I can tell you from a Maine perspective, it's super important to make sure that your home is properly insured to value. So homeowners policies, naturally every year, if you look at your actual homeowners policy, you would see that your dwelling value increases likely by 3% every year.
Okay.
It's going to automatically do that. That's inflation. And it's doing that because homes appreciate. They don't depreciate unless it's a mobile home. Mobile homes depreciate, but regular primary dwellings appreciate. So in order to make sure that we're keeping your home properly insured, it's automatically the dwelling value will increase by 3%. And it's super important because if you had a total loss, let's say a tree completely went through the roof and totaled the home, you need to make sure that your home is properly insured to value so that you can access all of your dwelling value and then some. Usually you get replacement costs. You have a homeowner's policy with replacement costs, which means in the event of a total loss, you're going to get, let's say your home's insured for $500,000, you potentially will have $500,000 and then an extra 25%. Sorry, on top of that. So it's just basically really important to make sure that your home is properly insured to value. A lot of times too, homeowners, they do renovations. They add additions onto their home.
And don't tell their insurance agent.
And they do not think to tell their insurance agent. So that's a problem because now let's say there was a total loss and they only had, maybe they were completely underinsured that home. There's going to be potential penalty in the claim payment because the home was not properly insured to value.
I have a question about that. Let's say somebody adds on to their house, because this is happening more frequently where people are now having to buy smaller homes to start because of the payment. And then with the mindset of adding on, so then they add on. Now, let's say they have their policy with you and they add on and they forgot to tell you about it. And like a tree falls on to the addition. Does the insurance company like just cover the whole property as an address, or is it like, oh, you never told us you had an L, so that wasn't under?
So the way it will work is that by definition, the insurance company's responsibility is to put you back into the same condition you were in before the loss using materials of like kind and quality, but they're not going to pay you in excess of that. So if, like, again, it will go back to if you had a replacement cost homeowner's policy, you're going to get potentially the whole dwelling amount value with an extra 25% on top of that dwelling, and then that's it. So if you added on a significant addition or renovation and you didn't tell the agent, then potentially you're now going to have a claim issue. You're not going to get exactly what you just dumped into that renovation because their job is they have to put you into the same condition you were in before the loss occurred, but what's like listed exactly on that policy. So that policy usually is, if it's a typical replacement cost policy, you're going to get whatever is listed as the dwelling amount plus an additional 25%.
Interesting.
That's it.
So it's been my experience recently that I feel like I went for 10 years and I never heard from an insurance inspector to come and look at my properties, that I had policies on. And now I feel like every week I'm getting a call like, hey, so-and-so wants to check out your building at Banana Street, whatever. And I'm like, where is this coming from?
Yeah,
And then if we don't do it, the policy could get canceled,
Yes. So again, that's because in my 20-year career, I have never seen it this difficult to place insurance.
Yeah.
And it's making sure that, like, especially if you're buying a home or a second home, I would also say do not waive the inspection. I've seen you've probably seen crazy things too.
Mean like a property
a lot of
inspection,
times, property inspection, a lot of times in order to get the house, because there's such little inventory, people are doing crazy things like they're offering full cash price and waiving homeowners inspections. I would say don't waive the inspection.
Right, yeah, that's our policy here at Pouliot Real Estate. Don't waive it.
Do not waive the inspection.
And we have 2 forms they have to sign if they're like adamant about it.
Yep.
It's not just 1 form, it's 2 because people get selective amnesia after the fact, like, oh, geez, I didn't know. It's like, well, you signed 2 pieces of paper and we educated you on why to do this?
That's because, like I said, insurance companies today are super picky as to what they will write for new business. They want homes that have had all the proper updates to electrical, roof, heating, and siding within the last, like, it's got to be 20 years or earlier, and even earlier. Like, I'm seeing things with like roofs. If your roof has shingles that, but I have 25-year shingles. I hear this all the time. That doesn't matter. If the insurance company does an inspection and they tell you that you need to replace your roof, and even though you say you have 25-year shingles, all that means is they're manufactured by the company that's made the shingle for 25 years. But guess what? They're not on the hook for insuring this home. Right. Insurance companies can do whatever they want. And if they say there's evidence of lifting, curling, shingles, or moss growth, and they want you to replace your roof, guess what? You need to replace your roof.
Moss growth too, huh?
Moss growth
I've learned like 15 things in this podcast already.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought it was like lifting or missing shingles.
No, moss growth too, they don't like. This was vegetation. I had one client that was subject to this re-underwriting, and they had an old farmhouse in Bath, and they got a loss recommendation notice from the insurance company that said, you need to, by end of July, you need to replace your entire roof. You need to repaint your house, because there was evidence of a lot of peeling paint, also not a good thing. And you need to cut any of the overhanging trees over your roof line. And if you don't do it by July 31st,
burn it down. That would be a better option.
Yeah, or we will cancel you. If you don't comply with A, B, and C, we will cancel you by X date. Well, obviously this client was really not happy and upset, and so he notified me, and I had to explain to him the state of the market right now, and I had to say, look, like, I also looked at the photos and the inspection, and I said, I have to agree with the insurance company on this. There is evidence of lifting and curling shingles that does need to be replaced. I can't move you to any other insurance company right now, because this will also be an issue with them. And if the policy cancels due to loss recommendations, guess what? Now I have to disclose this on an application, and it's going to make it that much harder for me to find insurance for you, because now what insurance company is going to want to insure you if they know you just got canceled by X company for A, B, and C reasons? It's going to be an issue for them too.
Totally.
So you need to he didn't like what I said, but he understood, and I said, you need to, and once you do A, B, and C, then I have choices again, and now I can potentially remarket you and move you to another company.
So one thing that's super common in Maine is, water in basements, and we have now a new disclosure requirement on the real estate side if there's ever been a flood, or things, or if it's in a flood zone and all these kinds of things, which can help people to determine more quickly whether or not the home might be more prone to having water issues. But this building that you're in, we came down a stairway to come to this podcast. When the construction was happening, there was this fluke event where there was a deluge of water that came down the side hill, and it was on the day that they were taking out the old stairwell that used to be on the side. And so there was just plywood on the side of the building and a big hole outside. Well, all the water came down through that hole, through this floor that we're sitting on now, to the basement below us. And my wife and I had all of our things from our house stored down there because we were in the process of moving. And I called my, insurance company, and he's like,
no coverage because it's a flood.
Coverage because it's a flood.
Yeah. And that is, I was just talking
and I guess what I'm getting at is, how do the insurance companies differentiate between flood or groundwater, and what, more importantly for the listeners, what kind of coverage should people ensure that they have to make sure that no matter where the water comes from, they're covered?
Yeah, it's a good question. But I think something that people don't know is that flood, they think when they're purchasing a homeowner's policy, it covers everything.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
I mean, naively, I was one of those people too.
This is a very common myth that is like, oh, well, I purchased insurance, it should cover everything. Well, no, you actually do need to read the provisions. You need to read the policy, because flood is specifically excluded on every homeowner's policy. And the reason why is because it's better covered elsewhere in the form of a flood policy. You can purchase a flood policy, which is what
Which
you
is
need
probably
to do.
way less expensive when you're not in a floodplain,
Exactly.
I'm guessing.
If you're not in a flood zone, it's very reasonable.
Because here it's like, would be like $15,000 a year because the building.
It's in a floodplain.
Yeah, from the river.
Yeah. If it's in a direct flood zone, yes, you're going to be paying thousands.
Yeah.
If you're not in a flood zone, it can be less than $1,000. It's way more reasonable. But yeah, absolutely.
So
flood
like if
insurance
someone
not
has
covered.
a sump pump, they might want to really consider having flood insurance.
Yeah. Yep. And I think just, we see a lot of the claims that we're seeing are water related claims, especially freeze ups. Because we live in Maine, in New Hampshire, right? We get a lot of snow. So,
well, I've had 2 clients in the last month who have sump pumps and the power went out and they were out of town.
Yep.
And so then they come home to 2 or 3 inches of water in the basement. I'm guessing that wouldn't be covered.
It depends. There's always it depends.
Right.
And it depends on the type of policy that you have, the homeowners policy, because there are some nuances to them. And especially with the carrier we have you with. Sometimes you might get a lot of times insurance contracts are famous for we give you coverage and we take it away and then we add it back in the endorsement at the end. It's very confusing, again, which is why you want an independent agent that knows coverage because insurance contracts are written by attorneys. It is super convoluted and complicated.
It's all a numbers game.
It's so confusing. Even when I have to read the policy language, I'm like, what is it really saying? Because they make it so complicated. So I'm so glad I have a whole claims team that can read contracts really well, and they can read those provisions and say, okay, well, actually, it gave you some coverage here, then it took it away, but then this endorsement was added, and that gives you $5,000 for some pump failure. So now you've got $5,000 covered dollars. So again, there is sometimes minimal coverage that you'll get for things like that. But yeah, I would say a lot. We have seen, my claims adjuster said in her 30-year career, she has never taken more flood insurance claims than she has this past year.
Yeah, it's been really bad. And in our case of that instance, we were lucky because our general contractor was amazing for the project and he had his own like kind of umbrella policy or something that covered what our losses were. So that was good. But when the river flooded last December and we had 6 feet of water in the basement and I was going around in a kayak like to try to move that, none of that was covered.
No, it's not.
Because we didn't have flood insurance here.
And it could be catastrophic and devastating for a lot of people that do
it
not have
cost
the
us like
financial means.
$35,000 out of pocket to fix the issues in the basement.
Those are those scary situations where,
I figured I'd share my own story of what it's like when you don't have the right coverage.
It's exactly. If you don't have the right coverage, it can really be catastrophic for people.
I mean, for us in the case of flood insurance, it's kind of like pretending to be a tiny little insurance company of our own and saying, all right, well, if something happens, the deductible would be $25,000 and then the insurance premium's $10,000 a year. So 10 years of that plus the deductible's $125,000. If we only have one issue in 10 years, we're okay. But if it happens every year, then we'd really be in trouble. So it's a little bit like rolling the dice.
It is. And honestly, I like we've seen tremendous amount of liability claims as well. So think about you have a dog that's on the bad dog list. There are several dog breeds that are problematic.
Not golden doodles, though.
Not golden doodles, fortunately, but there are several. We've seen several dog bite claims, trampolines, in-ground pools with diving boards, with slides. I mean, these are all proven to statistically result in more frequent claims and result in big liability issues. And so insurance companies want to know about those things for a reason. They're usually disclosed on the application. They'll say, like, do you have any one of these dogs? Do you have a pool with an in-ground pool with a diving board? They want to know because that potentially could mean that they're not going to insure you based on underwriting. But luckily, again, because we have multiple insurance companies, we still have some options available.
It's not like you're with a single company and it's like, hey, we can only sell you something.
Exactly. And that's why, like, if you go to State Farm can only sell you State Farm. And they can't do anything else. So if your premium goes up at State Farm, oh well, right? It is what it is. But at least if you work with an independent agent, we have other options.
Right,
so
can shop it around.
Shop it around, and that's important. So.
And so that's good because I wanted to talk with folks before we kind of talk into like, wrapping up with purpose and passion. I want to talk a little bit about the cost of insurance. And first of all, it's been going up. I guess, would you see any case in which it could potentially go down? And second, are there things that people can do to help reduce their premium? Say, hey, I can only afford a certain payment, and this house is X and the rate is this, so that's part of the payment. But we have principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, pity. And so the principal and interest and the taxes, you can't really do anything much about. But the insurance is a little bit of variability in terms of like what you have for coverage and so forth. Are there things people can do to help get their insurance rate down?
Yeah, there are things, again, and if you have a great relationship with your agent, they should be discussing those things. So oftentimes it means bundling your policies, right? So the more policies you have with the insurance company, the more deeper the discounts are going to be. So that's why, if you have your home, you should also add the auto. That's usually going to give you 15 maybe or more percent premium decrease because they have the home and the auto or personal umbrella added. So looking at ways to bundle, looking at things like, especially on the homes, adding central burglar fire alarms gives you nice discounts. Adding low temp freeze alarms gives you discounts.
We had an electrician recently that we did a segment with, not part of the podcast, but kind of like a DIY type thing. And he was talking about adding like Ring cameras and stuff like that. Are there any discounts if people have security like that?
There are. And again, it's part of like the central burglar fire alarm.
Yeah.
And ideally they want it connected, like a direct connection to fire station or police station. So... And oftentimes it can be required if you have a high value home, $1 million plus, they're going to usually require some type of a central burglar fire alarm. But there are good discounts that come with that. And it's peace of mind, it's protection, right? I would even say, I was thinking about this too, because we do see so many water related claims. A lot of times people, let's say you're going on a 2-week vacation, I would say shut off your water to the home because if the pipes burst and the water is just running for 2 weeks, it's a lot of damage. So, I'm trying to be like,
I had that happen one time.
Yeah, see, these are I've seen it.
On a flip property, the drywaller calls me and he's like, hey, I just got here and there's 6 feet of water in the basement. And what happened was it got too cold in the basement because, it's a flip. So the heat is not on keep fill. It's like, hey, you got to call them and fill it up. Well, we forgot to do that and it got cold in there and the water main where it comes into the meter just cracked and it filled, like to your point, it just filled the water right through into the basement.
And these are super expensive and costly. So it's a good idea. So I'm saying if it's the primary home and you're going on a trip to New Zealand for 6 weeks, shut the water off, have a caretaker, have somebody checking on the home. Those are all really good practices. But in terms of, discounts, there are a lot of options that exist. Again, that's where you need to really have a good agent that can properly advise and counsel you through it. On the auto side too, personal auto, a lot of times youthful operators, we are seeing tremendous rate increases for families that have youthful operators on the policy. So anyone that's licensed to drive, so age 16 to really 25, insurance doubles, if not triples, the cost of insurance for just adding a youthful operator. It's so expensive, but statistically, it's for a good reason. They're more apt to get into accidents. So, so there oftentimes are credits for good student. Are they an honor roll student, AB student? If you can submit, proof of their report card, then there's a good meaningful discount you'll get on the personal auto side. So there are discounts like that exist that you just need your agent to counsel you through it. And
this
at the
is
end
a really
of the
good
day,
incentive to get my son to pay attention in school someday.
Sorry,
you can't get a car. We can't afford the insurance unless you get all A's.
It is a meaningful discount. Or going away to college without a car. A lot of times, when that happens, there's a discount that gets added to the personal auto. If you have a college kid that's out of school without a car, but because they're tied to the parent's primary auto policy still, because they're still considered a resident member of that household, they'll get a discount because they do not have access to a car while they're at school.
Interesting.
So they'll get a discount for that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you about, you lead a team of, about 100 people across 8 locations. And so how does housing, whether it's availability, affordability, or proximity, affect your ability to attract and retain staff?
Yeah, this question, I've been very lucky. Our turnover rate last year was only 8%, and industry average is 14%.
Wow.
So we're really proud of that. I have not been as affected because I think a lot of the communities that we have offices in, they are kind of more rural, blue collar, and my employees, a lot of them they've been established there in that community and they have housing. So, and also a really unique differentiator for us because we are professional services, but we do offer a flexible work environment too.
Oh, so people can work from home.
People can work from home. So we learned that.
Do you
through
require
COVID.
them to send you an email every Friday telling you what they did?
Luckily, we do have really good software in place that can really monitor things now. But I'm a very trusting person, so I trust in my people that they're going to do the right thing. I kind of think of it like a driver's license. It's a privilege
Not a right,
until it's not. But that flexible work environment, so by that I mean we allow people to work remotely 2 days a week, and they are consecutive days a week. So they can either work from home Monday or Tuesday, or half my people do, and then the other half would work from home Thursday and Friday. In theory, everybody's in the office on Wednesdays. And so that flexible work arrangement has really helped us, if anything, attract client and retain our client because they see that
productivity is fine.
Productivity is great. And again, like I said, we do have provisions in place. So we can, if we are suspicious of lack of productivity, we can monitor through some reports. But by and large, our people still are very productive, and they appreciate that flexibility so much that they don't want to really compromise it or do anything to get it taken away, because it could get taken away.
So it's not necessarily impacting Chalmers directly, but I'm curious as an executive, what you view, if any, the role of employers in housing creation is.
I mean, I think so. I've seen definitely in like Bridgeton, I'll use Bridgeton as an example because Bridgeton has had huge economic development in the last 10 years. And we've seen not just businesses coming to town, but we've seen a lot of housing becoming more available, new builds, a lot of apartment buildings, kind of more affordable housing options for Bridgeton community, which has been great. So I feel like Bridgeton's addressing the housing issues. Some of my offices like Cornish, Maine, or Norway, Maine, not as much of an issue. But I think the problem where I live, like North Yarmouth, even York, where we do have an office, it's the cost of affordability, right? That's an issue because people can buy a starter home now it's a much higher cost, right? It's like they're like $500,000 starter homes that aren't necessarily very big, but they're in desirable zip codes with good school systems. And so now people have to potentially buy an expensive home that they can't afford. So I could see how a lot of business owners, like it could be a real problem in terms of attracting people to come and be able to work close to where they live if they can't afford the housing that's being built. And especially in I think of North Yarmouth and all the surrounding towns around me, Falmouth, Cumberland, Yarmouth, Freeport, those are all very desirable zip codes.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we, and I speak, for myself as a business owner, we support different things like sports or like in our case, the food programs and so forth. And I think it's only recently that people, and maybe it's for some more so for businesses who are really struggling to attract or retain talent, are starting to think, hey, I need to be a part of the solution on the housing front too, because that's a part of the broader economy. I mean, it's like 16% of the United States GDP is tied to real estate. And, so can't have policies for homes if we don't have homes. And it's kind of like, it seems to me there's more people coming to the table to be a part of that, which is interesting.
I think it's great. I think it is. I think
you have like LL Bean and Rue and all these different employers that are like, hey, let's do some housing projects too.
We're also just seeing, like, because we're in the Lakes region, so we are seeing a lot of, obviously, waterfront properties are very desirable and are very, I mean, we insure everything from the seasonal rustic camp to multi-million-dollar properties on the water, and that's driving a lot of out-of-staters to the Lakes region in particular to buy these desirable waterfront properties. And so we're definitely seeing growth there. And half of our personal lines book of business is, believe it or not, insuring secondary seasonal homes.
Really?
Because that's how prevalent it is, because there's so many lakes in the area, and it is a desirable little slice of heaven. So it means that there's a great need for insuring those secondary seasonal homes. But I've seen all kinds, rustic camps, multi-million-dollar builds.
As we shift into the final question I want to ask you, I forgot to ask where you ski.
So I am very partial to Pleasant Mountain in Bridgeton, which was Shawnee Peak. It was Pleasant Mountain, then it was Shawnee Peak. Now it's Pleasant Mountain again. I'm glad about that.
Yeah.
So we still are season pass holders there. And now, because it's part of Boyne, it does give us 3 days to ski at any other Boyne mountain.
Yeah.
So I love Sugarloaf. Even though Sunday River was closer to Bridgeton, I like Sunday River too, but I definitely have a love for Sugarloaf because that's actually where I got engaged.
Oh,
My
cool.
husband proposed on
awesome.
the Widowmaker Trail at Sugarloaf.
Really? For real?
Yes. I was like, really? Out of all the trail names? Like, this is our
That's too
story.
funny,
And I
yeah.
have to tell people that we got engaged on the Widowmaker Trail. And he's like, well, it was either that or Misery Whip. We were skiing all the
He's
black
got a good
diamonds.
sense of humor. That's funny.
We were skiing all the black diamonds, and at Sugarloaf, they all have funky logging names.
Yeah.
And so, but I laugh now because Widowmaker is actually an iconic trail at Sugarloaf. So we have the trail sign hanging in our house, and it's actually kind of one of the most famous trails.
At least
there.
he didn't pick Choker.
I know. He could have picked like some really funky ones, but I'd take Widowmaker over Misery Whip, I guess.
Yeah. So purpose and passion, supporting women and families in the next generation is something that's really important to you. You're an advocate for women in insurance and a board leader with the Girl Scouts and IFOB, which is the Independent Federation of Family-Owned Businesses.
Yeah, it's Institute for Family-Owned Business.
Institute for Family-Owned Business. I'm only a new member.
Yes, I know.
what it
That's okay.
stands
I'll give you a pass.
So what drives you to stay involved in all of this stuff? And then with all the work that you do, what kind of message do you want to pass on?
Yeah, so I will say I do not know what it's like to not give back to the community because of the example that was set by my parents. And giving back to the community was just kind of in my blood. Like insurance is just kind of in my blood. That's what I grew up seeing. My mom and dad were involved in everything. And they were so good about showing the importance of why it's important to give back to the community that has helped my family business stay in business for 4 generations. And so I had that as excellent role models. I am very passionate about the organizations that I'm in. And I have learned that through just, getting started and involved in nonprofits. I got my first nonprofit was in my early 20s, and I joined for all the wrong reasons. I joined because my dad told me, you need to join that board. And I didn't have a passion for it. I still did it. And it's a great organization. And I gave it my 3 years, and then I respectfully didn't renew for my second term, and learned a really important lesson that it's important, and we all should have a civic duty to give back, and it benefits, the community, and it's a good thing to do, but you absolutely have to have passion for the cause. You'll make more of a lasting impact if you have that passion. So I did learn that I care greatly about championing women, whether you're in insurance or not. I've seen, and which is why I'm also so passionate about the Girl Scouts of Maine, because it's a statewide board that is designed to help build girls of courage, character, and confidence. And as a business leader in Maine, a female business leader, I have seen how much it is still needed to have more strong females in leadership in Maine. I am in a very male-dominated industry, and it's very often that I'm the only woman sitting around the board table. And I think we need to flip that script. And so I care greatly for helping champion other women to rise in leadership. So that's where Girl Scouts I care about. And obviously, Institute for Family-Owned Business is a wonderful nonprofit to help Maine businesses succeed to the next generation.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't even know about it until you had mentioned
Yes.
it to me, and it's really interesting.
And that was one of the things when I learned about it 10 years ago, I had wished I had learned about it sooner. I didn't know about it either. And I have since been a very active member of it, and I have made such excellent relationships and connections with other like-minded next-gen business leaders that really understand what it's like to work in a family business. We could be, and we do represent different industries, very different industries. We've got like, a lot of construction, manufacturing, insurance, but yet we all have the unique challenge of working with family members, and what does that mean? And so we can learn from one another through different affinity peer groups that I belong to that exist through the IFOB. And they also offer, I think, over 50 programs throughout the year. So when you are a paid member, you and any of your staff can attend any of the 50 programs as part of the membership.
That's great.
So it's a great learning ground to also help expand and grow your knowledge. So I love that. But I just...
And they have a national footprint.
The IFOB? Yeah, I mean, their bread and butter is Maine businesses. They're trying to even get more across the border into New Hampshire. But there is family business. There's a larger entity with Family Business USA. Yes, as part of this is just like a Maine chapter, but it's a great organization doing a lot of great things to help Maine businesses. So
that's awesome.
That's so both wonderful causes. So yeah, I guess my advice is definitely that it's important to get involved, and we should, but you really need to make sure that you're passionate and you believe in the cause.
And you have a list of things. That
I do. You would. I know, and I have to use my notes because I can't remember them. But I do have. I kind of call it a top 10.
I love it.
List, and I've been on panels before where I was asked about my core values, like what are they? So I actually put this together, and I figured, well, hey, like I'm just going to refer to it because this is what they are. So in order, it's my number 1 is fail to plan, plan to fail. That preparation is everything. So I say hashtag be prepared. And that's just how I go. Whether I'm giving a podcast or I'm on a panel, or I put in the work and I prepare for it, because I think it doesn't cost anything to spend that time preparing, and it always will pay dividends for you. My second is to show up as your authentic, imperfect self, and that vulnerability is strength. And that's something that I've also really learned as a leader. And I encourage more leaders to lean into their vulnerability and not be afraid to show their imperfections, because that's what's going to create more human connection with others.
And trust.
And trust.
Yeah.
People want to know that, oh, wow, Dottie's not perfect. She too is a busy mom of 3 and understands the demands. And like, I'm not afraid to tell them what those challenges are. I get it. And that allows me to form deeper connections with my own staff. So I say lean and show up as your authentic and perfect self. 3, I have lead with the 3 C's, communicate clearly, coach consistently, and care deeply. My 4th is delegate to elevate, empower others with purpose and growth, and they'll exceed expectations. I think that something I'm really trying to do more of is delegate. I can't do everything. At one point I was like, oh, I can do it all. We can't, but delegate, especially the things that we don't maybe do as well that other people can do better. So I would say delegate to elevate. My 5th is build a to-be list, not just a to-do list. So who you are matters more than what you check off. So I have like literally a Post-it note on my wall that says, what are my to-bes? Like to be curious, to be empathetic, to be caring, versus just that to-do list that we all have, like clean the house and do the laundry, right? Like the to-be list is more impactful. My dad taught me my 6th, which is take the high road. My dad always said that character counts, especially when it's hard. So,
well, especially I would imagine in your business where obviously the quality of the service is not the same, but the ability to sell the product is almost universal among, the industry, right? So it's super easy probably for someone to just be like, see you later. And you as the provider of the insurance could be like, what the heck, and freaking out. But what's
I
it
think
gonna get you?
oftentimes, and I think about this often when we all get those emails that are maybe a little nasty at times, or how easy is it for us to want to respond and have a dig back. But my dad would say, write the email to get it's therapeutic and then delete it and never send it. And I do that because part of the process for me, I think, is like getting it out and writing. But it's cathartic, but just delete it because, that's taking the high road.
Yeah.
7 is master the handwritten thank you note. Gratitude never goes out of style. So I call them ongoing regards. My 8th is hire for attitude, train on aptitude. That it is so easy to teach insurance. I can do that, but I can't teach you to have a good attitude.
Mm-hmm.
You either do or you don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
So hire for attitude, train on aptitude. 9 is be present and add value. If your absence doesn't make a difference, or if your presence doesn't make a difference, your absence won't either. One of my partners says that quote. He keeps that quote in his wallet, always with him, because it's super impactful, right? Like, be present, speak up, add value. Otherwise, your absence won't make a difference.
Which is so difficult in the world we live in today.
It is.
With so many distractions all the time.
It can be. Or just like people, especially I see it sometimes on my leadership team where I know they're thinking things, but they're like too afraid to maybe say it. Or I'm like, no, by you speaking up and adding value, that's healthy. It's candid debate. It's going to make us a higher performing team as a result. So be present, speak up. Add value. And then my last is fail forward. Mistakes are your best teachers. Embrace them and grow. So I call it kind of hashtag fail forward. We all make mistakes. I've certainly made plenty of them, but I think you just keep failing forward and learning from those. And again, I think if you're an authentic leader that's not afraid to talk about those failures, that's where you can really make an impact with people.
Really cool.
Because you see
really
that you're
cool.
human. I mean, we're perfectly imperfect, right? We make mistakes.
So I want to final wrap up. When I was on your podcast, you asked me, I thought, a really great question, which I think gives insight to the listeners to what it is that you like to listen to and learn from. So what are your kind of favorite podcasts, and also what books are you reading or like to read?
That's a good question. Obviously, I'm going to plug my own podcast, The Community Cast by Chalmers. I absolutely love re-listening to my episodes because, as you know, when you're the interviewer, you're so careful about paying attention to your next question and the time that sometimes you're not actively listening as well as you should. So I love to re-listen to it and actually hear what my guest is saying, because sometimes in the moment you're not. There's a lot of great insurance-related ones that I like to listen to. I'm trying to think, you have a lot of wisdom, though, in that 10 list that you have that I don't imagine comes from insurance podcasts. Yeah, no, it's a little bit sprinkled in from a lot of different things. I love leadership podcasts. So anyone that can offer, or any book that can offer leadership guidance is great. On my bedstand right now, which I haven't cracked open yet, but I will, is Mel Robbins' book, Let Them. So that's on my nightstand right now. I just listened to her podcast with Rich Roll a couple days ago. It was really good. Is it good? Yeah, the Rich Roll podcast is one that I did not mention when I was on your show, but I've recently become addicted to. And he's great because Mel tells a story about how she basically got ignored forever. And now that this has come out, it's really bringing forward. And it reminds me of like bamboo. It spends like 10 years growing below the ground. And then eventually it shoots through, and it's all about preparation and continuing to be as opposed to do. To do. Yeah. Okay. I remember that. I also like How I Built This, Guy Raz. I just think it's inspirational to listen to other, leaders, and how whether it's the CEO of Spanx or Ben and Jerry's, like it's just interesting hearing the entrepreneurial stories. That's cool. So I like that. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to just be a curious learner and listener. And I mean, I'm not creating new things. I listen and learn, and I'm not afraid to try things out, right? And just see what sticks. I love Simon Sinek. I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan. So a profound book for me would have been Find Your Why and Start With Why. Those two books were really helpful. I didn't know he had. Yeah, he's got Find Your Why and Start With Why. But it actually is like a guidebook for what inspires you? Like, what's your passion, and why do you do the things that you do. It's what's your why behind it. And
Yeah,
it
I
gives
mean,
you,
it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. I feel like I could talk to you forever, but like we're not living in the Middle Ages. We're living in an age of abundance, particularly in America, where we really have the world as our oyster. And so we do get a chance to contemplate, like, what is your authentic self? I mean,
Yeah.
can you imagine somebody in 1372 asking themselves what their authentic
Yes,
self
I
was?
know. What is it?
Trying to get the fire started and like chop the ice, 3 inches of ice off the top of the well. We're really blessed.
Then we are blessed. I mean, I love Brene Brown too. I think she's great. I don't know. I just, I get inspiration a lot. A lot of times I follow a lot of people on Instagram too. A lot of my feed is leadership thought leaders, and I'm always learning. I share them with my other managers. So we're constantly kind of, again, part of that, like we're curious learners and growth mindset. So we share information so that benefits us in our development. So those are some of them.
Cool.
Yeah.
So people who are listening want to learn more about you. Where can they go? And also what you have going on.
Yeah, I would say our website would be the best place, www.chalmersinsurancegroup.com.
CHALMERS.
insurancegroup.com is our website where you can find more about me and our company and our offerings. We are on all the social platforms as well. So I think we are at Chalmers Group on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook, so you can find us there. Or you can even email me, dcutter@chalmersinsurancegroup.com. My married name is Cutter. My maiden name is Chalmers. So professionally, I do go by both, Dottie Chalmers Cutter. So you can also email me there.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Dottie, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate the time today.
I learned a lot today.
Oh, good. Well,
and I'm sure our listeners will too.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. And it's just now I'm glad we're connected.
Yeah, for
Stay
sure.
in touch.
Thanks.
Thank you.